my wife will ask, like, well, when do we stop? What's the goal here? And, it kind of makes me focus and think, and it gets me back to the basics and the fact that, my mission statement is basically, I want to connect as many people as possible to the benefits of real estate investing, especially those that wouldn't really have access without me bringing it to them.
Hello, welcome into another episode of the Get Invested podcast. I am, as always, your host, Jordan Stone, and I am joined by my partner, Matthias Wilson. We're excited to talk to you today, as always, whether you're listening to us on the way to work on a Monday morning, hopefully not as early as this thing releases. I think you can tell by the excitement in our voice. We're obviously not recording it at that time. Wherever you are, we're excited you're here, and we are excited about our topic today, because today we've decided that rather than nuts and bolts or numbers, and we threw a lot of facts and figures at you the last few episodes, especially there was graphs and Excel sheets and all kinds of things that I'm sure those that were just listening were enthralled by. Instead, we're gonna take a step back and talk a little bit more about the why, just why we are doing this particular commercial endeavor, what draws us to it, and what motivates us. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to pass it over to Matthias to talk about mission statements and stuff like that. But we do want to just show that we are self-aware. And first of all, yes, we are doing this in part to make money. And, we also understand that people like Apple and Google and all these people who are like, oh, we're here to change the world. No, that's not, think different or whatever it is that they're doing. We're not buying into that. What we do have our motivations that thankfully go beyond just that dollar bill, although that is good too. So that's what we're talking about, how kind of it's an organic thing that comes from just our own lives and opportunities that meet real world need. So Matthias, take it away from there.
Yeah, well, I would argue that the way that Apple and Amazon and all those people make money is because they changed the world in a way that everybody liked. So and everybody had to have that iPhone. So theoretically you could do both. I'd like to think that's possible.
You could argue both. I would say probably, we can get into this. This is interesting because they did change the world. I'm definitely not saying they didn't change the world. I would argue that Apple now, because of the whole, if like you say, everyone needs an iPhone, that's more because they've kind of like locked in proprietary stuff that makes it hard for people to break away from, which is a smart business strategy that people fell for. That's not on them. That's on all the people who lined up at the temple of Apple. Google, on the other hand, I would say the search engine obviously changed how everything worked. But remember, Google doesn't charge for its services. Google makes money because of all the ads that pop up on your phone right after you and your wife had a conversation about a hairdryer. All of a sudden, you're getting a hairdryer targeted ads. So, change the world, yes. Did we all like everything that came out of it? I don't know, but yeah, 100%, of course.
No, I'm not in any way implying that there are ulterior motives. I'm just saying, it's like, hey, the best way to make money is to change the world for, to produce something that everybody wants. I think that's.
Well, yeah, 100%. Well, yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that.
That's been proven over and over. Yeah. But anyway, back to the mission statement. So basically, before I kind of rattle that off, I guess the main philosophy that I've taken to this endeavor most of this year is that, okay, my family, I've been doing it for a while, so my family's taken care of, and my family will have a path to generational wealth now because of the work we've done in the past. But my wife will ask, like, well, when do we stop? What's the goal here? And it kind of makes me focus and think, and it gets me back to the basics and the fact that my mission statement is basically, I want to connect as many people as possible to the benefits of real estate investing, especially those that wouldn't really have access without me bringing it to them. And basically what I mean by that is wealthy people, I say this a lot, wealthy people are going to be okay whether I help them make more money or not. I'm not necessarily changing their lives. But there are people who aren't wealthy, who would like to be, and who kind of would like a path that they can take to achieving that same thing that I did. Those are the people that I can actually impact their lives and help have the freedom to travel with their kids, or when they're older, retire and do a passion project, whatever it is, that I can help people achieve that. And that's kind of what I'm here to do now. I like that. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. So I feel like that's kind of, using my gift for, this isn't really a job to me. It's a lot of work, but it's not really a job. This is kind of like a mission. I'm going to keep charging and help as many people as I can. And we'll all build wealth together, kind of. So that's really the why behind the overarching why behind what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of interesting layers there. I think, my pithy tech take aside, which was more about their kind of high flying idealism, when really it's just like iPhone 16 is just to make money. It's not to make the world a better place. And it's fine. It's fine that you just want to make money, but don't try to tell me it's because you want to make the world a better place by having a 17 megapixel camera instead of a 16. That was kind of my little cheeky thing about that. But to go back to what we're talking about here, what I think is one of the interesting things to talk about is that concept wealth. Because first of all, I don't think a lot of people actually understand what that means, first of all. And second of all, I don't think people necessarily understand that word has such a range to it.
Yeah, I think
and
you got to define wealth, right? And the best way I can think of to define wealth is freedom. Freedom from having to stick to whatever it is that, a day job, basically. The freedom to choose what it is that you want to do. You have the financial stability. Your family, will eat no matter if you go to your 9 to 5 day job or not. Or maybe it's just a bolster of the wealth, so you can have a different lifestyle than you've ever experienced. Send your kids to college. Maybe it's the first time anybody in your family's ever gone to college, or maybe you get to define what wealth means to you. But I think the easiest, it all kind of boils down to freedom, and you get to make the choices that you want to make instead of what you have to make in order to support your family. And I think that's the real answer to what is wealth. It's not necessarily a number. You could be considered wealthy if you make what a New York City person makes, the average New Yorker makes. If you live in Southern Alabama, you're a wealthy person. But if you make that exact same salary living in New York City, you're like, you're barely scraping it by. You know what I mean? So it's like cost of living, everything means something. If you want to be in the city, then it's worth it to you to make that and scrape ends together up there, because that's a choice you've made. I think the main goal is just the freedom to make the choices with your life that you want. And wealth is the best way, the only way that I know of to provide yourself with that, whether the wealth is given to you or you earn it.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think I probably would use just the term independence more than freedom, but I think we get to the same place, right? The independence to choose rather than a lack of restraint. I mean, there are restraints, and if you don't have it, but yeah, you have the independence to pursue things beyond. And a lot of people have a career that's the job they wanted and they go to it. Maybe it's a 9 to 5, but they still like it. But at the same time, it's a good thing because they can't choose not to, or they could, but it may not be so great if they do.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not dependent on that company to keep existing and paying you too. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a good
good use of independence
is that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is that your situation is not dictated by anybody else's, a company going under or a market disappearing or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, annoying coworkers or terrible bosses or it's frustrations, etc. Right. Yeah. Harsh lighting of fluorescence, whatever you want to focus on. Exactly. I think that's how I think about it. And I just the way, right. Because I think so much in this, I don't like to make claims about this country. So, but I do think we think of wealth in a way that's not accurate a lot of the time, which is, I think it's just so interesting that your bedrock from the beginning, ever since you've talked about this with me, even before I was a part of it, it was, this very specific use of the word. It wasn't money, right? It wasn't income, right? It's a very specific concept that you can achieve in many different ways, and you've chosen one way to do it. And yeah, I mean, if you're willing to, wealth could be so much less than other people if you're willing to live a certain way, right? So it's really about lifestyle and in so many ways. Because I don't know if I've ever talked about it on here, but I live in a very wealthy part of Charlotte. I don't know how much of it's actually wealth. I know a lot of people make a lot of money here. I don't know how much of it they're keeping, right? Like, I think there's a lot of people who have great jobs at Bank of America and, other banks or tech companies in the city. But, also
I've been in your
when I was
neighborhood. I've
teaching,
seen the cars that they spend their money on too.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
some real nice
yeah.
cars.
I don't think every person who like I taught had the money to be wealthy and let their kid drive a Tesla. Like, I just don't, or I had a kid who drove a Maserati for a while. Now, granted, it was technically his mom's, but still, I mean, it's like, maybe they do, and good for them if they do. But, that's the difference is you can have a high income and that has nothing to do with wealth. I mean, wealth seems to be much more of a mindset with money rather than amount of money. So I think that it's just an interesting thing to bring to the forefront, I think, because it's what we're talking about, what you want to develop and what we want to develop is not just like throwing money at people. It's here is a model of a way to let you choose a lifestyle
a pathway
works for you.
to getting to whatever you're passionate about or whatever you want to do, whatever your dream life looks like. A pathway to get there. It's just, however many stepping stones you want to add to it, depending on whatever your goals are. I want to provide people with the opportunity, I guess, to take themselves to somewhere that most of I mean, it's true. Most people won't ever get to. But I think most people could. I think they just have to be connected to a pathway, and they have to understand that it is possible, and that they can do it. I guess so. That's kind of a lot of my LinkedIn posts are about or trying to get the word out. I was like, hey guys, you can do this. This is not. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm just a dude who grew up with a ton of siblings, is homeschooled, and went to a state school and went to the military and then started a business. That's literally all you know what I mean? Like anybody can do it. I just think it's connected with you got to be connected with a pathway that you can kind of trust and visualize and get you moving.
Well, and I think you're bringing up the kind of like the youth is a good way to take this. I mean, I am glad to hear that you haven't, been holding out that you owned a ruby mine and haven't told me.
Trust me, I would be real pissed if Dad talked about that now. I'd be like, oh my God, Dad, you had a ruby mine this whole time?
Really? This entire time?
Were we doing this dumb stuff we were doing?
Yeah.
Why did we rent a wreck and drive to Kansas City?
Yeah. Weren't you saying like 2 years ago that you had like no money? But no. So, I mean, I think what I was going to ask, and it gets at you kind of just, I'm just this guy who, homeschool, et cetera, all that whole thing. Do you remember? And I've actually never asked you this. Is there like some moment you remember, like a light bulb moment? Not so much that like, hey, this can be done. Like, oh, we could do this, me and Jen. Like, I know you've talked about the first house and like the kind of realization of that. But like, was there a moment where you realized like the broader mission, or I mean just the broader scope of what you were doing, like where it fit in? I don't know. That's a poorly phrased question, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say
I'm not expecting.
It's been developing for a while. I don't know if I can point to a specific moment, but like I'm pretty close with most of my siblings. We're all scattered to the winds, and we a bunch of different philosophies. But I'm a family dude. I think the moments come when I want, like, Jen and I have discussions like we want to do family vacations, and it's sometimes it's hard to. Well, there's 6 of us, so getting my family together is a a logistics nightmare.
Yeah,
but it's also like
a lot of aligned vacation time.
I want I want my family to have the freedom to hang out with me. If what's the fun of all this wealth if I can't share it with the people I care about? And that kind of gets me thinking down the road is like, well, what if, first of all, there's tons of people in that situation that, yeah, it'd be great to go see your immediate family as grown ups later on in life, and get all the grandkids and cousins together and just like have those big things. It'd be really nice to do that, but like how realistic is that everybody's going to be able to afford and be able to take the time off of work and all these things to go do that on a regular basis? I mean, it always will end up being once every 4 or 5 years, and I'm like, well, what if I can help them and people like them get to the point where they're a little less dependent on that daily income, and they have the ability to store up and take the vacations and have the freedom to kind of move things around whenever they're not necessarily paycheck to paycheck or anything like that. And you know what I mean? Like that, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the more I think about, maybe it's just the fact of me getting older and thinking more outside of myself, I guess, is I think that's
You've
kind of
always been
where
a real selfish son of a bitch, I gotta say.
yeah, that's people say that about me for sure. I
All
don't
the
know.
time.
I think that's just what it's kind of been a development since I saw the writing on the wall that I was going to get to my personal goals and be able to get out of the Air Force and spend the time with my family, and that I have now created a path that we will keep building wealth and we'll be able to do whatever we want. I think I started going, okay, cool. Maybe I check that box in my mind and start thinking what would make this even better is like, well, if all my friends and family could do it with me, and then we just kind of launched off on that path.
Okay, so it started kind of in a pretty basic human place of like, oh, I want to help my family out or those closest to me. Yeah. Okay. But I think the interesting tension there is that you probably, you couldn't really help them out without making the mission of your more than your family, right? It's not like you got to get other people involved for this to work out.
I'm not like,
as big as your family is,
yeah.
You can't just buy an apartment complex with just just the 8 of you or whatever. So, on that note, I guess, I know Jim and Darla were just down there. Are they, have they got, I don't even think I know this or not. Have they gotten in on one yet? Or that, cause I feel like my dad is, I know we've convinced my dad to like barely invest in one, like these old people sometimes.
It's newfangled, man. You can't trust it. No, yeah, they're big investor. I'm basically running Jim's old 401k. He's
Nice. Okay.
He's got several investments, and basically I pay him on one, and then he takes that stack of payments from one, and he'll just put it in the next one. So he's in three syndications, I think. So
all right, nice. Way to go, Jim. Did they still live in that house that's like way out, or did they move in?
Nope. They moved to lease. Mom finally got a new house with a big kitchen and lots of room, big basement.
Okay.
And babies playing all over the place. They got a cool setup now. Mom's really happy with it, so really psyched about that. She needs a lot of space to feel comfortable having her kids, because she likes having the kids home, but in that other house it was getting tight.
Yeah. Last time I was there, Rebecca was the only one that had a kid, so I can't imagine what it was like.
Yeah, that's like 15 grandbabies ago.
I know. That was so long crazy. Ago. My parents, they bought the house that they built that you just saw the other day. They built that specifically for that reason. Like the upstairs, they don't even have to go up there. That's just for So
for when it's a good plan. Man.
You know what I missed? One of the things I missed about these flatlands down here, other than not being in the mountains, is the basement. No, not really any basements in Charlotte. You just have to dig into red clay too much. It's not worth it. But
not a lot of basements in Destin either. You'd have to wear swim trunks.
Yeah.
We're at about 4 foot above sea level here.
Yeah. No, you just have I have an underground saltwater pool. Do you mean an in-ground saltwater pool? Nope, I sure don't.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's real cheap to keep it down here. Watch out for the mud. But that just got me sidetracked. But I think one of the interesting things that's I feel like it comes through when you talk about it, that in a lot of different ways, and whether you're writing about it or talking about it here or just off mic or in general, is this idea of the threshold, right? And the access, which is so interesting because, and in some ways it's not even necessarily, it is access, but it's also access because people actually know it exists, right? So that's just 2 steps to access. There is, this thing exists. Now let me go find this thing.
Yeah, well, usually it's the other way around. And that's good points that I wanted to bring up too. So basically, the vast majority of the people that I talk to who are just kind of blue collar doing their thing, they've never heard of this type of thing before. They just happen to have I know them socially, knew them from childhood, whatever it is, or military, whatever it is. How I know these people, they're like, that's a thing. You can do that. So it's usually you have to be like pinpointed. That's why I kind of, do all the social media stuff that I do, because nobody knows about it still. The vast majority of people have no idea. They could invest in apartments without learning how to be a real estate, mogul or whatever, and bringing all the money and buying it themselves. And nobody knows that. So and I think there's two things that are interesting on that. So one is, access. So once they find out about it, you know, so the type of offering that we do, we'll probably get into that in a minute. But basically, the regulation, we're limited to 35 investors, and we talked a little bit before, but like, I'm always wishing that they would open that up to more, so that I could accept smaller amounts of money and still get to where I wanted to go. In terms of, we need $2 million for this property. I wish they would open it up to 70 investors, 100 investors, because I would be able to say, if I'm able to take 100 first time newbie investors, I could allow, $5,000 or $10,000 and get to my numbers a lot quicker with more people. Now I'd have to know a lot of people. I don't know that I know how that many people, but basically, you see what I'm saying there. The point I'm trying to make is that I wish I could lower the threshold of who could get into these as low as possible, or at least I'm trying to, and that's kind of what my mission is at this point, is to get that threshold lower so I can get more people in.
Yeah, and now I know I asked you, and we are gonna talk about this, and we can do it now, but I kind of want to dwell on this aspect of it for a second. I asked you last week if there was any logic to it, and I've actually done some research since then about the 35, and I can't find anything, because here's the thing I don't want to get into the weeds as much, but just there are some numbers sometimes, and there are not numbers other times, and the 35 in no way fits in either of those. Anywho, so, but I think, so this idea that, like, coming from the educational world, we have this idea kind of built in a lot of different ways, right? Because public education was started as a thing of access, right? Because before public schools were founded, people didn't necessarily have access to basic education. The whole goal was to build a educated population who could then fulfill their civic duties, and know more would build more, and know more would create more opportunity and wealth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on down the line. So the idea of access is like fundamental, right? To why, and then we're always working to figure out the ways in which the system may not be doing it the best for these people or that demographic or whatever. So, we're always kind of attuned to that idea of like, okay, we're giving you this ability to learn, and then you need to act on it. But the threshold thing, I don't know. And then I guess the threshold would be like, depending on what they want to do, they can take what they learned in high school or college and take the next step, right? Whether that be go to college or go to a trade school or start a business, or when I was teaching college, I guess, go out and find the job they want, or start a business, or go to grad school, whatever the case may be. So it's interesting to me thinking about applying that to this realm, because it's kind of similar, because once people know about it, find out a way to be a part of it, that first time, unless things go epically wrong for some reason, and obviously not our stuff, that would never happen, but I'm speaking generally, they're not going to lose that after that one time. After that first time, maybe they're not able to do it every single time they see one come along, but like, it's gonna, again, if everything goes like their lives were this way and they were responsible adults, and now they also have this thing, it's not going to stop. Like, once they get that one like over that threshold, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
it's a proof of concept.
That's the moment,
it clicks,
right?
It clicks, and now this is possible. Now they may choose. I have investors who invested, early on, and for whatever reason, they were like, yeah, I'm good with that one. I'm not necessarily interested in doing more, but the concept is proven to them. And so maybe they only did that first one, and they haven't done any of the successive ones that I've brought to them. But that I think they know that it's there, and the concept has been proven. I think that's the big, the big factor in getting people moving towards whatever these goals are that they have. And that doesn't necessarily mean that maybe the fact that some of these people have invested saw the power of investing. Maybe they choose to do different types of investments. But I like to think that they realize that, hey, if I leverage enough of my time and effort and as a de facto money towards investing or towards growing something, then I, what I mean? I think I've proven the concept of investing in general to them versus just the fact that they invested $10,000 with me once,
Yeah, but I think exactly. I mean, proof of concept is very important, of course, as far as them coming back, and especially, for us. But I guess I was thinking about it more just as like, not mental a mental barrier. You know, the idea of the sublime is you see something that completely changes the way you think about the world, right? Like your schema kind of fall away,
Yeah,
and like
I think it
things are
changes.
rewired.
Like it
It
changes like
rewires
the
the way in
Overton
which,
window of what you think is possible now because you've seen, hey, this
yeah,
$10,000 wasn't a huge amount of money. It's a lot of money to a lot of people, but $10,000
it's not
in a few years,
unreachable.
yeah, it can turn into $25,000 after a few years. Okay, now you can do that math, and suddenly the aperture gets a little bit bigger in terms of what's now possible, what's achievable for people.
I like the use of aperture. That's a good, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, as much as I was making fun of cameras earlier, phone cameras earlier, yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, exactly. So it's just, I didn't know I could do that. Idea is
hmm
interesting. And again, I'm coming from the, having a 16-year-old who you tell them something and they're just like, what? That's a thing? It's just funny to think about like how that can also happen at like, I don't know, 45 or 50,
yeah,
where you're just like, what? That's a thing? Because as much as my dad has always been a shrewd financial guy. Now, granted, for a long time since he was a minister, we didn't have any money to do anything. But like he was always smart about retirement accounts and all this stuff. And he taught me about all of that. But I had never heard of this at all, ever. Right. Like he didn't, I don't know if he knew about it or not, or he thought he wasn't, had no way to get into it or not. I mean, at some point I know he probably did if he wanted to, or if he had known. So it's the same thing. Like your parents, same thing, right? Your dad, he's a smart guy. He's done a lot. I mean, did he know about any of this?
no, of course not.
Exactly. Yeah.
It tends to be like I don't want to say elite, but like just you have money. People who can make money approach people with money, and they make more money. That's kind of how it works. It seems like, and it's like, well, that's cool. But like, I kind of going back to, I'm not changing a rich guy's life with if he invests with me. Yeah, I'm gonna provide a good service to him. That and frankly, I need. It's helpful to me when wealthy people write big chunks of money into my investments. That allows me to get in a smaller, accept a smaller check from somebody who isn't as wealthy. So it almost a little bit of, hey, if I get enough heavy hitters, I can go after, I can always accept 35 people because everybody can write a check for 1,000 probably, whatever. Taking that to the logical end, obviously that's not necessarily the case, but I'm just saying I'm not changing that guy's life. I can definitely turn the light bulb on, and an average person who's working a day job, saving a little bit of money, and wants to, thinks he's going to have to work till he's 60 to retire, and then he's broken and won't ever be rich. I was like, I think I can change that. I think I can help people beat that estimate of what they're capable of in their lifetime.
Yeah. And that's why I love the word wealth, honestly, because honestly, I don't know if making people rich, quote unquote, is really even the goal, right? I think if, well, it could be. It's fine if that is. But I'm saying, like, I wouldn't say it was unsuccessful if someone got in on this and then they just eventually were able to, like, you know, they own their home outright, and, they're just so financially stable. They don't have tons of money, but they're just financially stable to the point that, they're going to be fine no matter what.
Yeah,
They don't live
exactly.
lavish lives. They're not rich, but they're just like, I mean, you know how much many people's lives would be changed if they just didn't have a mortgage, but they had their house? That'd be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that note, so yeah, getting back to the access and the knowledge about it. So when you're talking about your dad and being good with retirement accounts and all that, this is where I saw a post about it today on LinkedIn and went on a little rant on commented on somebody's post. I was agreeing with them. I was just ranting further than they did, but basically,
Rant.
I was I was re-ranting. Basically, it was a post about how is investing in real estate considered an alternative asset. It's the oldest asset in the history of humankind, right? Like we built caves, and that was an asset to us. So it's like it's frustrating to me that financial advisors, they work for banks. Most banks, they'll sell you stocks, that own real estate. A real estate investment trust, certain types of stocks do
Securities.
own real estate, but you don't get a piece of ownership of that property. You get a piece of the
Mm.
company that operates you know what I mean? So it's like it's frustrating to me that these people, they call themselves fiduciaries. They're leaving out the 90% of people who are millionaires. This is a known fact, have invested in real estate. either made most or part of their fortunes, as it were, in real estate. 90%. And for those who, almost every millionaire you talk to will have at some point maybe a couple rental homes. Will do something like what we do. They've invested in real estate. They own a Walgreens or something. They own the land that a Walgreens sits on, or McDonald's or something. Like, that's a ton of people do that, and the wealthy people know that real estate is where it is, and nobody tells the average Joe that, hey, figure out how to get into real estate. That's where the money is made. That's where the wealth is created. That's very frustrating to me. So, like the retirement accounts and the self-directed IRAs, I'm dealing with.
Yeah,
I had a story yesterday where somebody's they're trying to pull money out of an old 401k and roll it into a self-directed IRA to be able to invest it in a real estate, kind of like what we do. One of my investors, and he's like, yeah, I always get told, everybody's telling me this is probably a scam, that I shouldn't do it. It's like, they're incentivized because a financial manager makes money with however much money he manages.
Get Adam Niederhoff on the phone right now.
It's not Adam. There are good ones out there who don't, who understand that there's a broad picture to wealth, and he's very big on the holistic thing. But there are also other ones who's like, I'm not making money if you pull your money out of here and go invest in real estate, regardless of whether that's the best option for that person. And that's the frustrating part to me, is like, I don't know how that's fiduciary if you are just completely poo-pooing an idea that will make this person wealthy. And also, it's just, yeah, I get worked up about that. And they'll always tell you, hey, look out for scams, and basically doing what they can to keep your money in their system, where you don't have access to the thing that makes everybody wealthy.
Just on a bare minimum, like, you can talk about mitigating risk and like, okay, here's what this is and does, and here could be the downsides. But just to say that it is a scam, which I do want to come back to that idea of like the scam thing, which it's interesting that came up in a completely different way than I was planning on talking about it. But yeah, that doesn't seem fiduciary at all. Let's just put it that way. It is interesting though, as we've talked about, that we haven't there. You talked about in the newsletter that you wrote that we released today, actually, I guess just gave away when we're doing this podcast, but there's all these incentives to help build properties, right? There are a lot of good government incentives, but it seems like this is a miss, where there's not enough incentives for marketing these financial tools. Because everyone, you're at any job, they're like, here's our retirement thing, here's this, at the school district, it's like, okay, here's the pension, but also here's this guy to talk to you about having another separate account. It's like, that stuff is out there. Everybody knows about it, right? That's why everybody has it. So it seems like, I don't know, maybe this is one of these days, this will just be a branch of our company. We're just marketing the tools as part of as part of it.
I mean,
but yeah, it seems kind of interesting.
I think it's incentives. I think you're right. There's no incentive for the people who write these. Well, I mean, the SEC, right? The SEC regulations. We were talking about this before, but like the people who write the regulations that talk about who restrict it to 35, that we can't really figure out why the number is 35. The whole goal of the SEC is to protect people from scams, right? To protect people from potential fraudsters, the Bernie Madoffs and everything, which is good. We want that to happen. But what we end up doing is we end up writing, sometimes it seems, arbitrary rules that restrict access to these things. And the people who write these rules are typically going to be, your Wall Street type dudes, stocks, banks, bankers, all these kind of guys whose focus is on the primary assets, not the alternative assets. Those are private, alternative, side hustle kind of things to them. And therefore, it's just less, you know what I mean? Like everything's geared towards the hey, pension plans, 401ks, like you talked about it. It's all the momentum is going that way because that's what those guys do. Maybe the answer is to get some real estate dudes into the regulation, the SEC and the regulators. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, the incentive, I suppose, or the key thing here, I think, is fungible and liquidity, right? They need things that can be fungible and liquid to move around to make money. Like, you invest your money, they get to do things with that money to make money, and therefore you also get more money, right? So that's
fair. Yep.
And I can kind of see that, because that's a bigger a bigger piece of how people, how money gets moved around. I guess you couldn't really have a bank that's
money.
only
That's
a
how
real
a bank
estate
makes money.
bank. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be possible like our bank is only a real estate bank, because eventually you'd have to have like actual money to give
Yeah,
people.
exactly. It's yeah, 100%.
So,
You got to have
but
deposits in order to
it
lend
is,
out. So.
yeah, exactly. So it is interesting though, because one of the things that we are doing and why it is kind of a quote unquote mission, not necessarily the same as a mission statement, but kind of like a goal, a philosophy, a mission, a calling, if you will, is that there is this tension, right? So I was doing some research, like I said, and I did not discover why it's 35. I guess someone likes that number, or I don't know, maybe their favorite football team had just won with 5 touchdowns. I'm not sure exactly why 35 came up, because at some point there's some exemptions you can do. So the big thing here is that what we do is considered an exemption to SEC ruling, SEC regulation.
Correct.
We do not have to register with the SEC because we follow certain rules. And there are other versions of this exemption, one of which at one point you couldn't have any more than 100 people. One of the exemptions used to be 100 people investing. Now, if that was the case and 35 was like, okay, you can have no more than 35% non-accredited, then I would be like, okay, I get it. I see where you're coming from. But no. These two are not attached. This is a completely separate thing. And in our 35, we can have as many investors as we want, just 35 non-accredited ones. So this what we do is follow something under Regulation D. It's Article 506.
Mm-hmm.
This is 506B. 506C is the one. Yeah, 506B. 506C is the one. If we were doing just accredited, we could market more. Regulation D was passed in 1982. Now, I'm not going to give a history lesson. It was passed as an amendment to something that has been amended, I don't know how many times. It's the Security Act of 1933. And as you mentioned, we want to make sure people aren't being defrauded or scammed. That was passed, as you guys may be able to guess if you know anything about history, following the big crash of Wall Street in 1929, to make sure things were not getting out of hand and there wasn't a lot of either fake or manipulated things. Well, it's been amended so many different times down the line, including this important one in 1982. And recently, in the last 3 years, has been amended 3 different times. And it was amended in 2012, famously, in the Jobs Act, that changed the way you could raise money for small businesses. Because exactly what you're talking about, we're trying to figure out, how do we democratize and get it to enough people, but also how to protect people who aren't, what they use the word sophisticated, who aren't in this world, and they might be scammed. So it's an interesting tension, and that's where that attempt is, which it gives us this purpose. And I think that's kind of interesting that we're kind of in this place where we just really haven't, as a society and an economy, figured out. We're constantly updating how to try to do this. I do think it's funny in my research, because I made that joke about, can we just do a GoFundMe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is, you actually can do crowdsourcing for small businesses, not real estate investments, unfortunately, but so close. But I just think it's cool that we're kind of in this place where there's a need, because this is a hard thing to do. Just to wrap this up, I was answering one of those LinkedIn things like, oh, how do you do this? And it was like, oh, how do you balance SEO and branding voice, a brand voice? Like, how do you make sure you do keywords, but also say what you want? And I was like, this is a false distinction, right? If you have something, like you said, Apple or Google or whatever, if you have something that meets the market, that meets a need, not just a market need, but a human need, and you understand that, and you understand how to talk about that, the keyword's going to take care of themselves. They are the keyword. Like, it's not, buzzwords aren't going to cover up for something that's not real. So I was just like, this is not a distinction at all. If you have a good brand voice, the SEO is going to take care of itself, because the keywords are going to be there. Like wealth, right? The way we're talking about. It's funny you say that real estate was the original investment, right? Because that's obviously very true. And I used to teach my kids about abstractions. Like, what is an abstraction? And wealth was the term we used, because it was like, well, back in the day, you know what made someone wealthy? They had a lot of cows. And
exactly.
These urban teenagers
were like,
got? What? Yeah.
How many cows? Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
Because that means you could eat for ages.
Yeah, exactly. How much land? Yeah, I got cows, I got land, right? I got crops. Yeah, 100%. But anywho, I don't know how you feel. I mean, that was just an interesting thing to me because like I said, I wanted to do this research to kind of figure out where this 35 came from. And that took me down a rabbit hole of other things. And, you had mentioned that it was recently that they allowed this kind of thing to happen. And you're right. It's, right before my lifetime, 82. So it hasn't been in existence that long, but they just keep trying to tweak it a little bit each time. So I thought that was an interesting kind of context what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe one day I can try to team up with some bigger players and influence that, get in there and say my piece and be like, hey guys, how can we open this up wider and still accomplish the goals of protecting people? And I mean, there's always going to be risk, and it's always going to happen. There's always going to be bad actors, but maybe just straight knowledge education is the answer to that. Because if everybody knows about it, now you're not now you can vet it against other people because there's more than just this one creepy guy who's telling you he's going to make you rich overnight and then steals your money. Maybe the answer is just get the word out there. This thing exists to many more people, and then they can look at one and go, oh, this guy's, I'm interacting with 2, 3, 4, 5 people that are talking about this concept now versus this one guy who found me. Maybe that helps.
Yeah.
Just, broaden their knowledge base, and they can detect the Bernie Madoffs a little easier that way.
Well, protect from the Bernie Madoffs, I suppose you mean. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I'm a big Bernie fan. So.
Well, taken out of context, that can mean a lot of things.
Yeah, I know.
So I got me off track. Yeah, it seems like exactly. That's why I'm talking about like everyone knows about the retirement account. It seems like I should just like start showing up at companies and be like, "Hey, that's great." Also, but maybe if you listen to a podcast that explains to you how to read an investment offering, maybe that'll empower you. I don't know. Maybe you can find one of those. I'm not sure where, but somewhere probably. All right. Well, on that note, probably should wrap this up. I do want to end though, just with again, just reminding people who've made it this far that yes, please like, subscribe, heart, restack, post on LinkedIn, 5 stars, all of the things, anything positive. But also, we'd love to hear from some people. Some comments. You can make fun of us. That's fine. We've also been asking for topics you want to hear about, whether that be in the newsletter or on here. We'd love to hear from any and everyone. So please, thanks for listening and shout us out if you got anything you want to talk about. Otherwise, that's it from us here at Get Invested. I'm Jordan. That's Matthias. And we will talk to you later.